You're listening to the Wanderlusting Wives podcast, your podcast for escaping life's monotony, indulging in your wildest travel fantasies, and discovering the constant beauty of this ever-changing world. On today's episode, we're joined by Todd and Nikki Bensley, who share about their experiences traveling through the Azores and Portugal. Welcome to the Wanderlusting Wives podcast. We are your navigators, Allison
and Regan, and welcome to another Travel Tuesday. I don't know why I was thinking about this the other day. It was one of those things like, you know how when you're falling asleep at night and you just have like these random thoughts coming into your head. This was one of those random thoughts, was like, why do I keep saying welcome to another Travel Tuesday? That was so last season. So anyways, welcome to another just regular plain old episode of the Wanderlusting Wives podcast. We have another two guests coming on today's episode to share about Portugal and the Azores. So we got some really exciting stuff coming your way. But before we get to them, Allie, go ahead and plug away at our social media.
All right, I'll make it short and sweet. Instagram, you can find us at Wanderlusting Wives. Twitter is at Wanderlust Wives. Facebook is Wanderlusting Wives Podcast. And then we have a Gmail that is wanderlustingwives@gmail.com. And then we would love any and all positive reviews on our podcast, wherever you may listen to your podcast. So we have, like Regan said, two guests today. We have Todd and Nikki Bensley, who just so happen to be my parents and previous guests of the podcast. So if you love what you hear tonight, check out, I think season 1 is where most of their episodes were. So check out season 1. I know there was France in there with my dad, a Mother's Day episode with my mom. Did we do a Father's Day episode too? We might have. It's been 3 years, so sorry. But go back and find them. Todd and Nikki Bensley, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Welcome back. It's so weird calling you by your first names, but keep it professional here on the podcast. We're really excited to have you talk about the Azores and Portugal. Do you have anything to plug for us? Any social media? Anything?
I am on radio silence on social media.
Okay.
However, I do think that Todd has a couple of books that he could plug, and this is not necessarily into like this specific conversation that we'll be having today, but if you're looking for a really cool getaway to a small town in Western New York, Medina, New York's a great place to be, and Todd would be your person to ask, and he has a couple of books. Todd, what are your books that you can share with us?
So both of them are on Boxwood Cemetery, the local cemetery, and it's about the history of cemeteries in the United States and the different movements for cemeteries, but it's also a lot of local histories, lots of obituaries of different people that are buried in Boxwood. And as Regan said, if you're ever in Western New York, feel free to hit me up at the Village of Medina website. I am the village historian, and you can find my email there. I'd love to connect with you and show you around our nice little village that we have here.
See, you do have something to plug. There you go.
There we go. We don't like liars here, so
he was just being humble.
Yeah, Medina is a great little town. Allie and I both grew up in Medina, New York. It's a teeny tiny little town in the middle of nowhere, or so I'm told, Western New York. But it really is beautiful. Lots of really great little restaurants, super charming. So check it out and hit up Todd if you're there. But anyways, moving on across the pond from Medina, New York to the Azores and Portugal. So I would just love to start with, like, when did you go? Why did you go? Like, why did you pick this destination?
Well, we picked this destination because Regan, your parents wanted to go to Portugal. But we were trying to decide where to go, and that's what we decided on. They were going to be in Europe for 4 weeks, and we talked about a couple places, and I said, no, I don't want to go back to London. I've been there, So we finally decided on Portugal, and then Todd realized that we had to go through the Azores to get to the mainland of Portugal. So that's why we ended up going to the Azores for 2 days. And we're really glad we did, because we have a lot to talk about today with the Azores. So that's how we ended up going there. But we spent a total of 8 days But we spent in Portugal, but 2 of those days were on the Azores Islands.
And what time of
Nice.
year were you visiting these places?
It was the end of March, first week of April, so it was not the best season. It was kind of off season, but that has its own advantages, as you've talked about before on the podcast. Less crowded and all that. So the weather wasn't spectacular. In fact, and when we were in the Azores, it pretty much rained most of the time we were there. But we just made the most of it. We threw on our raincoats and decided we were going to see it because we were there, and we had a great time, even though the weather wasn't spectacular that time of year. But it's in the middle of the Atlantic, so usual summertime in the America is the best time to go there for the weather. But they said when we were there that honestly you can get all 4 seasons in one day any time of the year there. So being out in the middle of the Atlantic, they have strong ocean breezes and currents and that, and brings in lots of weather throughout the day. So
I would definitely say that
Yeah.
was true. We experienced all 4 seasons we were there. In fact, 2 days before we were there, they had ice on the mountain. They said that never happens, and they don't even get frost there, so it was very unusual. So it was a bit on the chilly side when we were there and windy. We definitely had some breaks and sun and so on, but it was so windy that the wind and the rain was just coming at us horizontally, and we're trying to hold our hoods on and trying to brave it through just to see the views that we could see. In fact, there were some views that we went to go out to at the edge of the cliff walk or whatever, and it was just white, like a white wall in front of us. So we did miss out on a couple things in that, which we can talk about in a minute. But for the most part, it was great. We were just like, hey, a rainy day in the Azores is still better than a sunny day at the office. So we're doing it. We're going and we're having a great
Ooh.
time. And that
Mm-hmm.
was our theme. It's like we're doing it. Enjoy ourselves, and we did. We loved it anyway,
Yeah.
despite the yeah, it's great.
I love that sentiment. I love that sentiment so much.
Yeah,
Man, thank you for
absolutely,
bringing that to us. I'm gonna
absolutely.
put it on a pillow.
Yeah, I mean you're in Portugal, so it's great, right? Just take
Yeah.
it all in and enjoy what you can. So
And the Azores are part of Portugal, right?
yeah, it's actually an autonomous region of Portugal. So the Azores themselves, there's 9 islands. They're about 3,000 miles from the coast of the United States, about 1,000 miles from the Portugal's mainland. So yeah, they are part of it. And actually, when we went on a tour, we'll be talking more about our tour a little bit later. But I asked the guy, I said, do you feel like he grew up in the Azores? I said, do you feel like you're Azorian or do you feel like you're Portuguese? And he instantly said, I feel like I'm Portuguese. He said, our islands would basically be nothing without Portugal. So I was kind of surprised with that. I know like a lot of people are kind of very localized. So I was surprised by his statement, but it made sense as we'll talk a little bit about later on here.
Yeah.
That's an interesting point. It makes me think of like Hawaii in the United States. They almost feel like they're their own country, I'm sure, because they have a completely different culture than the mainland United States. So, not that
Yeah.
I know everything about Hawaii, but it makes me think of a similar comparison that maybe Americans can make if they haven't been to the Azores or Portugal per se.
Yep, and actually
Yeah.
they
yeah,
refer to the Azores as the Hawaii of Europe.
Oh.
I'm not sure if they exactly get quite the nice as weather as Hawaii, but it is definitely a kind of a tropical paradise of sorts. So
Yeah. So I've always been under the impression, just in looking at pictures of the Azores, that it's very it just kind of completely feels like a national park, but there are people who live there, right? So like there it's actually a settled place, which is not something that I thought was the case. So tell us a little bit about like what that was like, kind of being in a place that was so picturesque, but that was also very much somebody else's home.
yeah, yeah. So the Azores, there's 9 islands that make up the Azores. They're just in the archipelago is the word I'm trying to say. Okay, but anyway, archipelago in the Mid Atlantic. So it's 9 islands, and we happened to go to Sao Miguel Island, and we stayed in the capital city of Ponta Delgado, which is comprised of 150,000 residents there. So, and about 100,000 of them are living right there in the capital city. But we felt like there was hardly anyone around. It was really bizarre. It was just like you could drive down a road for quite a while and not see another car. Definitely, the cars are the way to go. You definitely want to rent a car when you're there. There's no really good way to get around otherwise if you're really going to explore the island like we did. I mean, the island is 40 miles long by 9 miles wide, so it can take you a little while. In fact, I think you were going to talk about that.
Yeah, we'll talk
How,
about it a little bit later.
yeah, the windy roads and all that. But you want a car. But we felt like there weren't many people around. It didn't feel real touristy. It felt very authentic. You just felt like one of the locals and very accepted. They speak, Portuguese is their main language, but most people are also English speaking very well, or at least enough that you can get by, especially in the more touristy areas. So, yeah, it felt really good there, but it was surprisingly quiet there, which I was really glad in a lot of regards too, because those streets are very narrow. And it's like, if we're wandering down these narrow streets, I'm thinking, I'm sure glad that there's no traffic here, like trying to come the other way or rushing us through or anything like that. So, we enjoyed that aspect of it. I mean, imagine during the peak season, you're going to see a lot more people there, but we enjoyed it. I'd recommend going the end of March, beginning of April for that reason, just because it's quiet, you can enjoy it. And hopefully you'll get a good, few days there when it's not raining. It was raining in a lot of places when we went there, so it was an unusual time. But we saw some sunshine and enjoyed that as well. So.
But I will say, like coming from the tail end of Western New York winter, as you girls are familiar with, ladies, I should say, um, it's kind of brownish here and all that. And getting off the plane there was just so beautiful, bright green. Lots of open space, even though the island's small and you're packing about 150,000 people in. It never felt crowded at any place that we were. And it often reminded me of home because there was cows everywhere. Um, and it was interesting. Like a cow would just kind of randomly pop up in this little area. Like, how did the cow even get into that area? But there's only like one or two cows, and but dairy farming is one of their main industries, so it made sense that there was lots of cows all over the place. But yeah, I mean, you'd see no real big herds, but small herds here or there, or just like one or two cows. It might just be the family cow or whatever. So yeah, it was very picturesque countryside, and even when we were in the towns or even Ponta Delgado, the small city, it was beautiful. I mean, old style European, streets and buildings and such.
Known for their rows and rows and rows of hydrangeas, which were not in season when we were there. But if you ever go to look, oh, it's absolutely gorgeous. I think you just riding down the countryside there and seeing the hydrangeas. I think that'd be great. And we did see azaleas in one area that we went to. They were absolutely stunning. But yeah, I think that would be another season, another time to view it would definitely be when the hydrangeas are out. That's got to be gorgeous.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, your dad would love that, Regan.
Yeah, my dad, my grandma. I'm thinking of all the people who just love flowers. Group trip.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing too because uh, the Azores are kind of like a crossroads of European travelers in that. So they have a lot of flowers and that are from all different parts of the world. Like there's actually quite a few Japanese flowers that do very well there because they're actually at the same latitude the Azores are with the Japanese mainland islands. So it was cool to see a lot of different things, and I couldn't really tell you what any of them were at this point, but it was a huge variety of different flowers and that again, like from the world, because as the traders were coming in from different parts of the world, they would bring in their different flowers that they had, or fruit trees or whatever, and plant them there, and a lot of them do very well there. So kind of a haven for people who are into flowers and plants and all that. So
That's very cool. Oh, Yeah, I have a list of like 12 people that you say flowers and plants, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm one of them. So like, let's go. But yeah, and so I actually want to go back a little bit to what you were saying about the roads, and like this is kind of a two-part question. First of all, I want to start off with like, what airline is this that you took that kind of like stopped in the Azores and then continued to Portugal? And then B, once you were there and you got your car, what was the driving like? Do you have any tips about that? Was there anything you needed to know? So that's my two-part question for you.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So it was SATA Airlines, SATA. And we took a direct overnight flight from Toronto into the Azores. And I think it was about 5.5 hours to get there. We arrived at 8 a.m., so that was perfect. We ended up having 2 full days there. And then we left out of the SATA Airlines and went to the mainland and then did it in reverse after the mainland. We went back and did it in reverse to get back to Toronto.
But yeah, the driving there was, I mean, it never felt dangerous or anything like that. But it's really, when we went on our tour, the guy said that when he was growing up in the 80s, they didn't even have paved roads. Like he was so impressed with how far they'd come as a country in such a short period of time in his own lifetime. But now pretty much all the roads are paved, but it's crazy windy because it's a volcanic island. So there was one point on the first day we were there, we got a rental car and went on our own to the eastern side of the island. And there was one point we had to go 9 miles, and it took us 55 minutes. And there was no
Wow.
traffic. It
Yeah.
was just so windy, hairpin turns back and forth all the way. We did see a few cars here and there, but they were going like in the opposite direction. So it wasn't like, we were in a traffic jam or a cow jam or something like that. It was
Cow jam.
just that the road was so windy that it literally took us almost an hour to go 9 miles, which I know living in a city you might be used to, Regan, but us
True.
I mean, but we were moving the whole time. It wasn't like we were sitting in traffic ever, but very picturesque all along the way. There's always something to see, around every corner, and it was very interesting. We never saw anybody because the weather wasn't very nice, but they do a very nice job of having a lot of picnic areas. So we imagine like families on weekends, just like little pull-off areas right next to the road there, and a little grove or whatever. There'd be a few picnic tables, so just imagine people, going out on a Sunday drive or whatever and just picking a picnic spot. So that was pretty cool to see as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. Especially with, I'm sure the views are incredible. I haven't even seen all your pictures, but I'm sure there are tons of amazing pull off spots, and we unfortunately don't get that here in the U.S. It's like, here's this dead animal on the side of the road, and don't bother pulling off for this nice view.
Yeah.
No, what we get
We
is like
quickly-
the world's biggest ball of yarn or something.
Yeah, I have pulled off to see the world's tallest filing cabinet. So
Yeah,
you know,
see? There we go. We
Yeah.
get some of
Yeah.
the strangest things, and 9 times out of 10, it's in the Midwest of the United States.
Yes.
Yeah. So, speaking of viewpoints, so one thing we did learn was in Portuguese, Miradouro means viewpoint. So there was all kinds of things that were labeled Miradouro, and then you would pull off, maybe have to walk 50 feet or whatever, but you're usually walking through like a beautiful, flower garden or something like that, and then you get to a spectacular view of the coast and lighthouses and things like that. So yeah, that was nice. So on the first day, that's kind of what we did. We just drove around the eastern loop of the island and hit all these different ones. We had some in mind that people had recommended online, but we just kind of we hit some of those. We didn't get some of those. We hit some other ones that we hadn't heard about, and it was spectacular every time we pulled over again. Even though the weather might not have been great, but it was just great views.
Yeah.
yeah, that brings up a good point. Like you're driving in another country, and it's in the signs are in Portuguese and kilometers. So how was navigating that? Did you have like your phone? Were you able to use your phone with the maps? Did you have to go old school with a paper map? How did you navigate?
Oh yeah, so we had Google Maps is what we used on our phones, and that was in miles. So it was like, okay, I don't have to keep doing the conversion. So that made it super easy.
Mm.
So you really have your freedom to make your way around the island very easily. So it was super easy. But there aren't that many roads either, so you really kind of go, around the one way and back around the other, and you get to your destination eventually. So
Yeah. Drive in
yeah,
some
being that it's only
direction, see water, turn another direction. Just,
yeah.
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 You keep the water on the same side, just keep going straight and then the opposite side on the way back, so then you're good.
Yeah. Well, and that,
Yeah, that worked out really well.
yeah, that sounds like honestly the perfect thing. And I've actually heard people say something similar about Hawaii, about how it's just perfect to get a car and to just drive and see what you see. Um
Yeah.
and since it's an island, and I do want to switch to like mainland Portugal in a minute so that we don't run out of time, but since it's an island, for food, like what was the food situation? Did it seem like a lot of it was imported? Did it seem like they were living off the land? Like what was that like? Because yeah, we all know. I want to know about food.
I laughed. Like I knew that was going to be one of the top questions. It has to be about
You are such loyal listeners. I love it.
absolutely foodie Regan. Your dad's a foodie too. I noticed. We talked
It's
about that.
genetic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's where you must get it from. But uh, one of the main things anyway on the islands was I didn't even really realize this until I just happened to encounter it. But I went to a fruit and vegetable stand, and I picked up a pineapple and brought it back to our Airbnb, and I went to clean it and cut it and stuff. And the tag says from the Azores. I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. I was like, this was probably like just picked or whatever. So it wasn't even in season, but it was the best pineapple we've ever had. It was so juicy and great. And
Mm.
then when you get to the mainland of Portugal, the other thing that was really good were their oranges, and there's orange trees all over the place, like lining the streets. And those are the best oranges again we've ever had. So, and then I come back and try to, purchase all these oranges, and I just like, they're awful. They're just nothing. They're not comparable at all. So, if you ever get a chance to go to Portugal, definitely go for the pineapple and definitely the oranges. Oranges are the best, and they claim that the Portuguese oranges are the best oranges in all of Europe. So far, I
Wow.
would say yes. I haven't honestly had any oranges in any of the other countries that we had. I would rank Portugal number one at this point, but I can believe it. They're really good.
Yeah, but they in the Azores they actually grow pineapples in their greenhouses. So it's not quite warm enough to have pineapples, outside year round. So we learned that you can actually take a tour. We didn't end up getting a chance to take the tour, but they actually grow them in the greenhouse. I didn't realize this that only one pineapple grows on a pineapple tree, and it actually takes 2 years for that pineapple to grow. So I don't know how they're priced as well as they are in America. Is it just takes so much effort to do that, but yeah, but it was very good. The food in general, I thought it got better as the week went on. So the Azorean food was pretty decent. There's one thing that they have there that's interesting, but we didn't get a chance to have that because you need to usually have to have reservations at the restaurant, but it's called Cozida, which is Cozida das Furnas. So Furnas is a little town that has like geothermal activity there, kind of like a Yellowstone. But the restaurants they dig a pot or they dig a hole in the ground and they put this stew like meal in the ground and let the thermal heat go for like 7 hours to cook it. But there's only a few pots that are available. So you really do need to get a reservation, which we didn't know ahead of time to be able to enjoy that meal. But that was certainly something that was interesting. We went to a place where they do the actual cooking and like each restaurant, you could see their little pot there and they had their name labeled on it so they knew that which one to take at the end of the day was theirs and that. So that was pretty interesting.
I thought it was interesting too because you could smell like a sulfury smell. And when I was reading about this cozito food, that it has a sulfury taste to it too, they said. So I don't know that I want to taste sulfur, but popular. So maybe next time, maybe not. We'll see.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I love the
But
idea of a
we did,
built-in crock pot, though. I want one.
Yeah, it's really cool.
yeah,
It's right there. Yeah,
yeah,
that was pretty cool.
yeah. We actually did have a interesting experience at is a place strangely called Nona's Teeth and Tomatoes,
Mm.
and we could never figure out why it's called Nona's Teeth and Tomatoes. But we ordered pizza there, and when it came out, we actually had to cut it with scissors. There was scissors on the table, and you would just cut your pieces of pizza with the scissors, which is something I'd never experienced before.
Like a whole like large pizza? Are we talking about like a personal pan pizza? How big
Yeah,
is this
Yeah, the
pizza?
whole like
yeah,
wood-fired pizza, and
yeah,
yeah, they brought out just regular scissors. They were in this tin can type of thing,
yeah,
and yeah, the scissors were there, and we just cut it and ate it. So that was kind of just funny to see that. But it
yeah,
was very good.
yeah.
So
But it was very good. So we do recommend Nona's Teeth and Tomatoes
yeah,
in uh, Ponta Delgado in the
yeah.
Azores.
And service was actually good there
Yeah,
because a lot of times in Europe, as you know, you guys know, you've been there before. Service is typically not that great because you don't have to tip the wait staff, so they're not in any hurry to turn the table over. In fact, a lot of times you have to wave them over to give you service, to bring your bill, and things like that. So this place was actually good. It was a small little place that was in walking distance of an Airbnb, so that's how we found it, and we were glad we did. It was fun.
That sounds
That
awesome.
sounds fun. And
Mhm.
I want to try cutting my American pizza with scissors, see how that
Yeah,
goes.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's also a good idea. You
yep,
cut that cheese and you're good
yeah,
to go.
yeah.
Yep.
Well, that's awesome. I really want to go to the Azores. That's definitely on my list at this point, especially after hearing about this. But I would love to switch over to mainland Portugal now. I'm going to Portugal this summer, so I have a personal vested interest in this episode. But what were some of the highlights of your time in Portugal? I know you kind of went all over the place. So what did your week in Portugal look like?
Yeah, we did. Todd did a lot of driving again, but we always plan it out ahead of time and just try to be the most efficient to get around as far as we can go and everything. But one of my favorite places was when we went to Lisbon. We stayed in an apartment there. We stayed in all Airbnb, so we got the real authentic feel, which is our preference whenever we travel to other countries. And we stayed in the Alfama district, which is the perfect European feel with the cobblestone narrow streets and some very, very steep hills that your streets that you're walking up and down, especially when you first get off the metro. You're going up a steep hill with your luggage, and then of course you got to go back down to get to your metro to get to to your next transportation stop. But that was one of my favorite places was when we went to the Alfama district, and I know that it was one of yours too because of the music. So
Yeah,
talk
yeah.
about that.
So Portugal is famous for their fado music, or fado, I guess is how they
Yeah,
actually pronounced
yeah.
it. But we wanted to go see it, and we'd done a little bit of research, and there was a lot of places, but you have to, in most places, you have to pay like $65 or 65 euros. They do give you a meal, and then you get to listen to the music. But that was, a pretty steep price to pay. So we just happened to find this place called the Alfama Grill, which we again highly recommend. That it's a quaint little place. You're not required to buy a meal. We did buy, a few appetizers and drinks and things like that. But the fado music was amazing. They had an older lady and then a younger man and a younger woman who were doing the singing, and a couple of guys. There's a fado guitar that they were playing. The one was playing, and then there's just a regular classical guitar. The other one was playing. But just it's like Portuguese folk music, basically. Didn't understand a word, of course, that they were singing, but
Nope.
you could feel the emotion in it, and they did a really good job of portraying that, and you could get a sense of what was going on in the story that they were trying to tell. But they it was very brief. They would sing a few songs and then go out and uh, have a smoke break. We saw that the one guy was chain smoking, so I don't know how he keeps his voice and chain smokes at the same time, but it was a really great experience and very cheap night. We ended up having like soup and appetizers, whereas the other places you had to have like a full 4 course meal and all that, which I'm sure was wonderful, but for us, it was perfect to what we did. So the Alfama Grill is definitely a place to check out.
Yeah, we loved it so much. Actually, we went to the music again another night in a different place. Really just loved it, enjoyed it. And it's just such soulful singing right from the depths of their soul, honestly. So that was really enjoyable. And I'd highly recommend it to anyone. Even though, like you said, you can't understand what they're saying, but you can feel what they're saying. And they stand like right in front of you, like at the end of your table, singing and playing the music. So that was very exciting.
That's awesome. Did you know about this going into Portugal, or this is just something you stumbled upon one night? You're like, where does that sound and where is it? I need to get to it.
So we knew of it going in, and I had heard just like a couple of songs. And honestly, I thought I was going to want to, shove something in my ears when I heard it, because it didn't seem like it was going to appeal to me, but it blew me away. It was very, very good, and we actually ended up listening to it when we did finally get a rental car. We ended up listening to it in the car quite a bit as well. So yeah, so we started in Lisbon and then we made our way north to Nazare was one place that we stopped, and it's actually has like world record waves. So it's a big surf town that is there, and there's beautiful cliffs that you can go on to take a look at the town from up above and all that. So that was very nice. And then our next Airbnb was in Coimbra, which has probably the top story of our trip, which was me driving. As Nikki said, the Google Maps usually worked wonders, but there was one incident where it didn't quite do that. Our Airbnb was tucked away in a little place, a little alleyway, and the owner said, "Don't put in our address because it won't take you there." But there's a little square right next to it that you can park in. He was going to move his car out so we could park our car in. So we put it into Google Maps, and Google Maps says we're just 1 minute away. So we just have to go down this one road to get there. So we start going, and it's a downhill road. And as we're going, the walls start closing in further and further and further. And we get to a point where we're like, if we go much further, we're going to be wedged in here. So we can't continue on. I don't know how we're going to get through, but we can't continue on. So we're going to have to back the car up this hill to be able to get out. Well, of course, not only is it narrow, but like they do in a lot of European places, they have a couple of random tables on uh, a little patio thing. So we're kind of hemmed in there. On the other side of the street, the guys are loading the beer kegs into the restaurant. So we're a bit hemmed in there, and they weren't going to move for us no matter what. I think they were enjoying the fact that we were kind of stuck. So we started we started backing up, and we had to pause because they were finishing up with the beer kegs. And all of a sudden, the vehicle doesn't want to move. It doesn't want to continue backing up. It's telling me something in Portuguese, and this is before we knew about Google Lens, so we had no idea what it was trying to communicate to us, but it was telling us for sure we're not moving anywhere. So we can't go forward, we can't go back. We're like, oh my goodness. So David and Trisha, Regan's parents, decide they're going to get out of the car. Not only do they get out of the car, but the guys at the bar had left the empty beer kegs next to the bar, so they ended up moving them to the other side so we had a little more space. Uh, Eventually, we were able to work our way out with a few choice words along the way by me, unfortunately. Uh, and so we back out and we get out onto the main street, and now it says we're 15 minutes away from our Airbnb when we were just a minute away a second ago, and we've got the guy waiting for us to meet us to go to the Airbnb. So the pressure's on. So we start to go, and there's roundabouts everywhere. We take the wrong exit off the roundabout, and we're sitting in traffic, and it's now telling us 15 minutes again. So we're like, oh my goodness. So I say to everyone in the car, I'm like, I know I shouldn't do this because the traffic was busy at this point, but I'm going to turn around here. So I turn into a driveway of a business. I turn around and start going the other direction. And lo and behold, two cars behind us were the Portuguese police. So they flash their lights, they pull us over, and we're like, oh boy, this is not going to be good. So the guy comes to the window, and he is up as soon as he starts talking. He realizes I don't speak Portuguese and he doesn't speak English, so he gets upset about that. So he just points and says documents. So we're like, okay, documents. So we get my license and my passport, thinking that's what he wanted, but that wasn't what he really wanted. So now he's even more upset. So he wanted the documents that were in the glove box from the rental car agency, so he could, run the information through there. So eventually he comes back, and I'm like, okay, I can't imagine what a ticket's going to be here in Portugal, and I obviously not going to come back to contest it. So uh, he just simply looks at me, and he like points at the road where the solid line was, and like said no, and I'm like, okay. And then paperwork, and we were on our way. And then we knew exactly where we had to go because we knew it was the next turn on the roundabout, and we are within 5 minutes. We were at our Airbnb. So we ended up going back later in the day, and we measured, and I could literally touch fingertip to fingertip on those walls where we were supposed to be driving down. So it was a good thing we didn't, because we'd probably still be wedged in there, still stuck in Portugal. So
Oh
that was
my gosh.
interesting. So yeah, just be a little cautious when Google Maps tells you can go down this road. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. But that was really the only incident that we had with that. So you want to pick up our trip from
A
there, Nicole?
cautionary tale if I ever did hear one. Man, oh
Yeah.
man.
Yeah. Gosh, we did go. I know, Regan, you're into wine, and your parents probably told you they did the port wine tour.
And they
So that's
loved it, apparently, even though in the week leading up to that trip, they were like, ugh, port, we're gonna hate it.
I know. They were so
Yeah.
surprised. I'm glad they tried it. They loved the wine, so that really worked out really nicely. But yeah, the wine, we don't drink wine, so we didn't even. I think you might have taken maybe a sip of the wine or
Yeah,
something.
one
I
of
don't
the
know,
dinners.
just to
Yeah, just
try it or
just to prove to
whatever.
myself
But
that I still don't like wine.
yeah, definitely sampled. It was like pastries and tarts and what was that called? Ovos moles.
Yeah.
Ovos moles. That's another type of very famous in Aviero. They're made there. It's like the place to get the authentic uh, pastries. Anyway, but it's like egg yolk pastry. It's really interesting. It's like egg, literally an egg yolk, and then the pastry over it with some sprinkled sugar on top. Yeah, so that was kind of interesting. That was probably the most unusual dessert that we had there. The rest were just like basic, really yummy tarts that one time we sprinkled cinnamon and sugar on top of it. And we had a couple, we had a few tarts and pastries in one day, that was no problem. And the gelato, we did have that. Made sure we definitely had
Of
that. So,
course, yeah.
or,
She mentioned Aviero. Aviero is a nice little town. It's actually called the Venice of Portugal because it has canals and that. We took a canal trip, and that was good. The guide was very good. Lots of good information about the canals in Portugal and all that in general. Um, one thing I would, 'cause I know you're going to Porto. One thing I would definitely, well, two things I would recommend. There's church that's covered in azulejos tiles, and just a block away is an amazing market. They've we love going to the public markets because you can really kind of see what people are what people their daily lives are like. And this, I mean, certainly it did have a lot of tourists, but it really did cater to the local people. And it was a beautiful day when we were there, so we kind of followed what a lot of other people did, which was get a few different things from the different vendors and just sit on these staircases and just enjoy the nice weather and chat together and enjoy the foods that we were able to find at the market. So that was very enjoyable as well in Porto. And then along the waterfront, it was pretty amazing views along the waterfront. So if you're going to do the port wine tour that your parents did, that's on the other side of the river, but there's a nice walk on the near side of the river as well that we really enjoyed.
Yeah, if you like going to the farmers markets, they have all kinds of cheese there. That's really big. As we said, dairy is a big thing. And olives. So Allie would be in olive paradise. Definitely sample those. And then by that church that you were just mentioning, do you remember the one with the blue tiles? What's the name of that?
Yeah, that's what I'm
That
trying
and
to
that I can't, it's by the farmers
remember.
market anyway.
Yeah.
But they have an amazing place. If you want the name of it, I don't have it in my head right now, but it has the best chocolate croissants, chocolate filled and chocolate drizzled on top. It was, I am definitely a chocolate croissant connoisseur, so that was the best ever. So I can
Mm.
get the exact name, but I can't think of it right
Yeah,
now.
the
But it's a
church
church.
was the Capella das Almas.
Okay, and just kitty
So
corner to that is you'll
yeah,
see a pastry shop there.
yeah,
And
it
it's
was
in the
very good.
window. Oh, it's so good. I had to go in and check it out. I'm so glad I did. It was delicious.
Yes. Ugh. See, yes. When you bring up food, I just get so happy. I don't know if you can tell, but I get just like a smile on my face. This podcast, we know that I think food is a language. I think it's an art. I think it's beautiful.
Yeah.
So I'm so excited to be able to experience this amazing chocolate croissant.
I definitely.
But
It's almost worth a trip to Portugal for the chocolate croissant and the oranges.
yeah, there we go. Ooh, put them
Wow.
together. Get some candied oranges on the. Oh, I'm
Oh
I'm envisioning this now. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, so these places that you went to once you were there, like obviously driving between them, was everything fairly walkable, or what was the transit like in each of these places?
Oh my gosh, we got the Navigante card when we got to
to Lisbon.
yeah, into
Yeah.
Lisbon after we got there. And that Navigante card is really cool because you can get on everything. We did from metro to bus to trolley to funicular. Am I missing anything? We everything we wanted
Yeah.
was you can purchase the Navigante card. So, but once you get there, then it's super walkable. All these cities, you can just wander and wander and wander and walk as much as you want. So it's very easy to navigate on foot.
Awesome.
Yeah, I will say Porto and the Alfama district of Lisbon are both hilly, so
Yeah.
you have to be prepared for that aspect of it. But it was good overall. There is in Porto over near the main bridge that goes across the river. There's a funicular, but unfortunately, it was uh, out of service that day, so we had to literally hike up probably about 150 steps to get to where we were going.
Oh
So
yeah, that was
that was a
bad.
bit of a bummer, but
That was bad.
that was a good workout. So
Yeah. Wow.
Ugh.
It is pretty hilly, and which is nice in a way because once you get up there, you've got a great view. And we did do some very very nice cliff walking. Some one time it was really rainy, so your mom turned her umbrella inside out and became a drowned rat because she didn't have a hood, but on her jacket.
Aw.
It was pretty bad. It was windy, but it was still. It's like they have their surfing capital of the world is there, so it was like we got to see where all the surfing happens. But we did go to some places that had some very special, unique rock formations and cliffs, and you can kayak through the natural arches and things like that, which we did not do that particular day. But if there was more time another time, I would definitely 100% do the kayaking. The water is crystal clear, very beautiful blue or aqua water, and you can just walk around hiking all over the place. So I definitely recommend the hiking and taking on all the views. It's gorgeous.
Mm.
yeah, so that was after we left Porto. We then took a 4-hour trip to the south, passing by Lisbon again to the Algarve region, which was kind of their the warmest part of the country. So it's that's where the rock formations were that she was talking about at a place called Ponta de Piedade. It was incredible. I had to keep telling myself, okay, you've got that picture already. You've got that picture.
Yeah,
'Cause I just wanted to take a million pictures. It was just so beautiful, like sandstone cliffs and blue water together, just
stunning.
spectacular
Yeah.
view. So, yeah, that's definitely a recommendation is to get to the Algarve region as well, down in the south part of the country.
Mm,
And there's so much greenery too, so it's a nice contrast with the greenery, the rocks, and the water. Very nice.
yeah. Ugh,
Yeah. Wow. Who knew Portugal was so diverse, huh?
I
Yeah, it's really
know.
Yeah,
beautiful. It's just,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
definitely recommend it.
And then there's down in the Algarve region, there's a little town called Faro, probably actually a small city, not a little town. But one of the things that they had there was the Capella dos Ossos, which was the Chapel of Bones. So this was there's the Carmo Church is there, and as was often the case hundreds of years ago, the churches would have the graveyards right behind them, so the congregants would get buried there. Well, they wanted to use that space for other things where they had the cemetery, so they dug up the bones of about 1,500 people and made this little chapel out of their bones, and they felt that that was a way to honor the people. It's creepy and very cool at the same time. It's not really big, but you can see like leg bones, arm bones,
Mm.
skulls. Yeah, it's definitely worth it, even if you're a little queasy about stuff like that. It was really cool to see that.
Dang, I've never heard of anything like that.
Mhm. Yeah, just rows and
Wow.
rows and rows of bones, and yeah, I think
Yeah,
some cement every now and then for
yeah.
more
Like
stability.
the only thing that wasn't bones was the floor, which had people buried underneath that. But
Oh
even
yeah,
the ceiling, everything was all bones. It
Oh
was
my
incredible.
gosh.
Wow.
Chill down my
When the bones are
spine.
good, the rest doesn't matter, right?
yeah.
Sorry, that was a little too much, but
A little bit of a joke there for you. Yeah.
yeah.
That sounds amazing. Like I've always heard about Portugal as if it's like this mystical place that like I didn't really know of anybody who'd been to Portugal and yet everybody wanted to go to Portugal. So I'm just really intrigued by everything that you've talked about and it sounds like it was amazing. So yeah.
It was.
Yeah, and we didn't even get to the interior of it very much. We were mostly along the coast and the cities and towns along the coast. But in talking to people going into, heading towards Spain, there's lots of like national parks and things like that, and more those types of activities versus the city type of activities. So that would be certainly a place that I'd maybe like to go back to if I ever went to Portugal, was to get a little bit more into the interior of it. But
Yeah.
we really loved the trip. I didn't really know that I wanted to go to Portugal that much until we just decided we were going to go, and then started doing research and got excited about it. Same thing with the Azores. We probably would have skipped over the Azores if it wasn't for the fact that every plane that was going to Portugal was stopping there first. So we just decided to, stick around for a couple days and see what it was about, and definitely worth those couple of days. I mean, I would say if you're going to stay on just the one island, like San Miguel, probably 3 days would be, a good number of days to be there. Maybe a fourth day so you can, work around the weather a little bit if you had to, but definitely 3 to 4 days would be ideal for that area. We were there for a couple and probably could have used maybe one more. So
Mm. That's awesome. I
That's a good tip.
I do actually have one more question on this too before then we have to wrap up here and get to our travel blitz segment. But what was the cost like comparatively to living in the United States? What was the cost like in Portugal?
Yeah, I actually thought, I think we were there in off season, but I thought that all the Airbnbs were very reasonably priced. Your mom did all the booking of that, so that was great. And I said, "Are you sure I gave you enough money?" But she said I did. I don't know. We split that, which was great. It was just the four of us, and we shared all these spaces. But we definitely found that it was very reasonable. In fact, the last night when we stayed in the city of Lisbon, outside the touristy area, we also stayed in Airbnb, which was amazing. It was probably had more square footage than my house, but it was pretty good size. And across the street from there, we went to a restaurant. It was actually a fish restaurant, and they tried to get us to try all this different fish and seafood and so on. And we were like, no, no. But they had one non-fish item, and it was steak. So they brought out these two steaks. How big were
It
they?
was a
Remember?
kilo steak, which is 2.2 pounds of
Okay.
steak divided between the two of us. So that was the only non-fish option. But like she said, when we got there, it was cool because they had a display of the fish, and you just walked up and said, "This is the fish that I want," and they had a charcoal grill right there that they would cook it on, and she presented us with a oh yeah,
Stingray.
stingray. Sorry. So
Oh.
she's like, "This is good for two people." And we're like, "Not
Not
these
these
two
two people.
people." Yeah. So I didn't even know people ate stingray, but apparently they do. But
Yeah.
yeah. So go on about
Okay,
the
yeah. So we had
steak.
these two giant steaks that were massive, and it came out on this big wooden cutting board, and it had fruit, of course, oranges, and other fruits all around it. And then they brought a big bowl of French fries, and we had water in the bottle. And bread, which I don't know. I didn't mention this before. I don't think I had it in my head, but that when in Portugal they bring to your table always bread, olives, and often cheese. And that's not like how we get free bread with your meal often it's included or whatever, but there they always charge more. Okay, so if you don't want it, you just refuse it and tell them, and they'll take it away. But I love olives, cheese, and bread, so that was
Yeah.
great. We always had that. Your dad and I always like, yes.
Yep.
Your mom's like, oh, I don't need any bread, I'm good.
Yeah. And
But
it wasn't bad. It was like maybe another 4 or 5
yeah.
euro. So it wasn't like it was real expensive, but it is an extra charge that you need to be aware of.
But since we're outside the normal touristy area, especially, but it was super cheap. I think it was like 28 euro or something like
Yeah.
that, which is around 34
Yeah.
$34 US. And we had these 2 pounds of steak and all this food and water and everything and bread.
Yeah.
It was like super reasonable. So the food was reasonable. We never had a complaint about the food. Plus, you don't have to tip, so that's even better. It saves you even more. So definitely, the currency is euros, so we used euros, and it was great.
Yeah. Oh, that's great to know.
Yeah, no
Wow.
problem. And you have no problem. Just go ahead and eat whatever you want.
I was going to anyways, but now that you're giving me permission to, go all out, I'm ready for it. Well, this is awesome. It sounds like this was an incredible trip. So before we wrap up, is there anything else that we didn't get to that you wanted to share about your trip?
I guess the one thing would be to plug the company called Pure Azores.
Mhm.
The second day we were in the Azores, we decided to take a guided tour, and the guy who was our tour guide, and actually they came and picked us up right at our Airbnb. His name was Hugo. It's spelled Hugo, but pronounced Hugo in Portuguese, and he was great. He was wonderful, and went above and beyond to help us and very informative. So I would definitely recommend that. It was just a van. There was 5 of us in there. There was a young woman from Poland who actually lives in London, and then a couple that was on their honeymoon that live in Florida. Yeah, it was a really good time. So I would definitely like to plug Hugo and Pure Azores. It was a definitely worthwhile day.
Yeah, I would highly recommend a small, intimate tour like that because it's very personalized. You can ask questions, interact with a local, and he gave you all the kinds of advice. And they took us out to a nice meal where they take all the tourists, on this tour and all that stuff. It's all included. And he kept giving us so many facts about the islands and the country. And we kept telling your dad, your mom and your dad, all these facts as we went along. Oh, and he said this, and when he said that, he has so much information to go by, and it makes it very interesting. You learn more and more about the country. So it was great. I definitely recommend the Pure Azores over. We saw some larger tour buses, and I kept thinking, I'm glad I'm not on that bus. So
Yeah.
the big bus.
No, the smaller tours, the more intimate adventures, and just being able to have like a presence in that and not get lost in a crowd. That's awesome. So cool.
Absolutely.
All right, y'all. Well, thanks for sharing all of that. I'm sure that our listeners are going to love it. Um, Moving along to what I know you're very excited for, our Travel Blitz segment. For anybody who has not listened to the Wanderlusting Wives podcast before, this is just a quick little rapid fire section where we'll ask a few questions, and whatever comes to mind, Nikki and Todd are going to tell us their answers. And if you identified with their style of travel or anything that they seem to like while they're traveling, this might be a good way for you to get some additional recommendations. So, Allie, you want to kick us off with our first question, and both of you can answer each time we
Okay.
ask.
Yeah, so the first one, which I'm sure you probably already know all these since you're our number one fans, but the first question is, what is the number one travel tip or hack that you have?
Don't overpack. I always like so happy when I can just decide what I'm going to wear ahead of time and don't go, oh, I might wear this, I might wear that, I might need this, I might need that. Look at your weather forecast, plan accordingly. Don't overpack. We don't check luggage. We just do our carry on and a backpack. So that's definitely my number one hack. And then if I can do one and 1A, it's like, you let people do the second one. I know
Go
you left
for
it.
it.
Yeah. So, and research and plan so that you don't waste any time trying to figure things out when you're there.
Yeah, so I'm going to take liberty as well since I am a loyal listener and I know that you do allow people to sneak in extras. Number one, go to the local public market. We always love going to them. Some of them aren't great, but they all are interesting. You can get good deals, and we stay in Airbnb, so it's nice to pick up the next day's breakfast and all that there, and get fresh fruits and vegetables and breads and all that and cheeses. And my other tip, and this goes way back to a trip we took a long time ago, the more billboards you see for something, the less you should want to go there because when we were in New Jersey at the shore, there was all kinds of billboards for this great breakfast restaurant. We went there, the breakfast was normal and paid about twice as much as we should for it. So the more they advertise, the less you really want to be there.
And
So
that goes for
that would be my
everything. Instagram also.
True.
Awesome. All right. Question number 2. Your top 3 favorite destinations that you have been to.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because some of our top destinations overlap each other, which is great. But Morocco is at the top of my list. The Chef Shawan, the Blue City. If you ever Google that, people should Google that. The Blue City, it is amazing. Zion is my favorite national park, and I can't go without saying Grand Canyon because I cried 4 times there. I was just so overwhelmed. Ellie probably knew I was going to say that. Loved it. We've been to the North Rim and the South Rim, but you can go at different times of day for the best views and different views.
Yeah, so I would concur with Morocco. It's something that we didn't really have on our radar until we went with a tour group to Europe, and the tour director was talking about taking a trip to Spain and Morocco, and it was amazing to go to Morocco. So different than any other place we'd ever been. Zion, because we do love outdoor stuff, and I'm gonna squeeze two together here. In February, we went to Aruba and Curacao, and I thought I had kind of, played out my love of snorkeling, but that totally rekindled it. Amazing. Swimming with schools of fish, swimming with sea turtles. It was just incredible. So I definitely have to, put that in my top 3.
Sounds like you might be another guest on the podcast. Okay, the next one, top 3 destinations that you want to go to.
Well, of course, after listening to the Wanderlusting Wives, got to go to the Galapagos. Definitely, that's so cool. I never even had it on my list until after hearing that from one of your guests, which was amazing. Iceland, because I didn't get to go when you guys went.
You could have.
So much. I know that. Yeah. So, and then Switzerland is something that I've just recently discovered that I really want to go to. So that's definitely at the top of our list.
Yes. So kind of similar to the Galapagos Islands again. After hearing the podcast, just seems like an awesome place, especially now that my love of snorkeling has been rekindled. So would love to get there someday. Iceland when we can spend a good week or two there, going around the country and seeing all the beauty there. And then again, Wanderlusting Wives, Croatia, and the Goulet boats,
Goulette.
Goulet
Yes.
boats. Sorry,
Hmm.
just very very intriguing. A place again that I didn't have on my radar until the Wanderlusting Wives brought it to me.
Wow, I love
We're
that.
doing something right, Allie. Also, I
Yes.
just need to say, um, as payment for us allowing you to plug your book on our podcast, might you plant the seed with my parents that we should all do a Galapagos trip together?
Yes.
Oh
Yes, we have
yes,
actually. We've
yes,
talked about like we want
yeah,
to go because
Excellent. Excellent.
yeah, we
Perfect.
can, like, yeah.
But don't
yeah.
forget your kids this time because we weren't in Portugal. So
True. Yeah.
That's true.
Amazing. Okay, question number 4. What's the strangest thing you've eaten while traveling?
Yeah, that's funny. I was trying to think of something, and you know what, Regan? I think it was when we were on a cruise and we tried the frog legs
Oh,
because it tastes
yep.
like. But it's mostly about the butter, I guess, with that. But that was the weirdest thing I could think of.
So gross.
But yeah, frogs for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably go with the same thing. It's interesting because I'm an adventurous eater in the sense I like to try different things, but I don't necessarily try really exotic things. So yeah, that's one nice thing about the cruises is you can always try the appetizer, and if it's completely disgusting, just order another one that you know you'll like. So yeah, so frog legs, I guess, would be it for me as well.
Wow, are you guys married
Wow.
or something?
And are you my parents? Because I'm the child that only likes chicken nuggets. So
Like taste like chicken tenders. So
yeah,
True.
You're getting better though, Ellie.
I am. Yeah, cow tongue was my strangest. So that's out there.
yeah,
I don't even want to think about that.
You don't. Oh, definitely not. Okay. Anyways, and then the top thing you can't travel without.
For me, it's flexibility. That's key because you think about all the travel delays or things that go wrong. So flexibility is something you always have to have with you when you travel.
Mm.
Hmm.
yeah, and I'm gonna do again a double here. So one is a power strip. So many times you go to a place and they just don't have enough outlets for all the things,
Mhm.
our phones and everything else that we need to plug in on a daily basis. So a small power strip is a nice thing to have on any trip. Uh, and the second thing is what was my second thing?
Your wife.
My wife. Yes, live without my wife. Obviously, we have the same vacations. Oh, I know what it was
Not your wife.
because yes, because it's brand new to me. Google Lens
Mhm.
is and Google Translate. When we were in Portugal, the first half of it we didn't have any clue about it. Then we started catching on to it, and it's amazing. I after that trip, I said I feel like I could go anywhere. Like I didn't want to go to Arabic speaking countries or to, Chinese speaking countries or whatever, because I'm like, there's no way I could learn that language. But now with Google Translate, it just, it seems like you've got it all right there. So definitely something that's new on my list, but we'll definitely be using quite regularly, hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are all a lot of those answers we haven't heard yet. So that was good. I like it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's been fun reliving some of these stories because I've heard some of them already, but some I hadn't heard yet. So that was fun to learn more about your trip. Also, a little plug for ourselves. My parents were kind enough to, and Regan's, were kind enough to leave some stickers behind in Portugal and the Azores. So if you see them, send us a picture, email us, social media, wherever. We'd love to know that they're being spotted out there. But I know you guys have been here long enough, so thank you, Todd and Nikki, mom and dad, for being on the podcast.
Oh, thank you for having us and letting us relive our trip and hopefully inspiring others. So we had a great time. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, and thank you for your podcast. Like I said, obviously you've inspired us in many ways with the podcast, and hopefully you've inspired your other listeners to check out some of the places. But definitely can't go wrong with the Azores, with Portugal, or Medina, New York. Remember Village of Medina, historian. So go to their website and you can hit me up by email, and it's a great little location. not too far away from Niagara Falls, Buffalo, and Rochester. So
there you have it, folks.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for listening. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to the Wanderlusting Lives podcast. Come escape with us again every other Tuesday for Travel Tuesdays.
Don't forget to give us a subscribe and a follow on all of our social media and wherever you listen to your podcasts. And until next time, wander on.